Imagine this. You are standing on a muddy European battlefield in the 13th century. The air is cold, the sky a steel gray canopy overhead. Across from you is not just a soldier, not just a knight, but a man armed with instruments designed to crush, tear, and rip the human body in ways we would today call torture. These weren't hidden in dungeons. They were carried openly, used in broad daylight, and feared by everyone who faced them. Today, we're stepping into a world of 10 medieval weapons that were basically torture devices, yet somehow accepted as normal tools of war. Tools designed to outmatch the armor, to break the body, and to instill fear. Let's begin our journey through history. The flail. The first weapon on our list is the flail, a weapon that embodies chaos. At first glance, it looks simple. A wooden handle, a short chain, and a spiked metal ball. But in reality, the flail was anything but simple. Knights across Central Europe wielded it from the 12th century onward, and even experienced soldiers struggled to predict its path. Unlike a sword that cuts in a straight line, the flail whipped unpredictably. It hooked around shields, tore through armor, and shattered bones. A hit from the flail didn't just hurt, it destroyed. Opponents often compared it to being punched by a spinning bear trap. The spikes didn't just pierce, they tore their way out. An infection was almost guaranteed. One strike could crush a collarbone, break an arm, or puncture a helmet. The flail was a weapon feared by everyone, even other knights. The Morning Star. If the flail was chaos, the Morning Star was brutality perfected. This weapon consisted of a thick wooden or iron shaft with a heavy spiked iron head, capable of denting helmets and collapsing rib cages. Most famously used in Germany and Switzerland. It was designed not to slash or stab, but to crush. The Morning Star was merciless. Strike a shield, and it splintered. Strike an arm behind the shield, and it snapped. Strike a helmet, and the spikes found every gap in the metal. One well-placed hit could end a fight immediately. Soldiers called it the Knight's Skull Breaker, a weapon that demanded respect and terrified the battlefield alike. The warhammer. By the 14th century, armor had evolved. Plate mail became stronger, and swords began to lose their edge. Enter the warhammer. One side was a blunt hammerhead for crushing, the other a sharp beak designed to punch through metal, almost like a medieval can opener. The warhammer was a weapon of calculated destruction. Knights and foot soldiers used it to collapse breastplates, crush limbs, and even dismount mounted enemies. In close combat, nothing struck fear into the hearts of armored warriors more than the iron beak aimed precisely at their joints. It was a weapon built for effectiveness, not elegance. The crossbow. The crossbow was so deadly that in 1139 the church attempted to ban its use against Christians, calling it too cruel. Unlike swords or spears, the crossbow required minimal training. A peasant could pick one up and kill a knight from a distance. Crossbow bolts were short, thick, and powerful. They pierced chainmail, splintered helmets, and some were designed with broad heads to tear wounds wider than a sword cut. Battlefields full of crossbowmen became silent killing grounds. A soldier could fall dead before ever seeing the hand that pulled the trigger. This was a weapon that brought fear from afar, and its efficiency made it infamous throughout medieval Europe. The poleaxe next is the poleaxe. perhaps the ultimate multi-tool of medieval warfare. It combined 3 weapons in one: a long wooden shaft, an axe blade on one side, a hammer on the other, and a spike on top. Knights in the 14th and 15th centuries loved it because it solved every problem. The axe cut through armor, the hammer crushed helmets, and the spike stabbed through visor gaps. Pole axes were used in judicial duels, where 2 men fought to the death. Every part of the weapon was designed for maximum damage, a brutal solution to the evolving challenges of armor and combat. The man-catcher. The man-catcher might look strange, but its cruelty was undeniable. Essentially, a long pole with a metal collar at the end. It was meant to pull noble enemies from horseback with minimal, permanent damage. But often it caused plenty. The collar's inward-facing spikes or teeth would dig into the neck or torso. Pulling someone down could dislocate shoulders, tear skin, or even crush the throat down. It was medieval law enforcement turned into a weapon. Designed to restrain, it was still an instrument of fear, demonstrating the ingenuity and brutality of medieval society. The boar spear. Originally a hunting tool, the boar spear found its way onto the battlefield. With a wide blade and crossguards near the tip, it prevented the victim from sliding down onto the wielder. Against cavalry, it was devastating. The blade pierced deep, stopping a charging knight in his tracks, while the crossguards kept the spear steady. Soldiers likened the force to catching a falling tree. It was simple, effective, and deadly. A perfect example of how weapons evolved from necessity to terror. The bladed mace. The mace was already brutal, but the bladed mace took cruelty to a new level. Instead of smooth flanges, the edges were razor-sharp, capable of slicing through armor and flesh simultaneously. Eastern European knights used it to both break and cut in a single strike. Victims suffered deep, near-fatal wounds that surgeons struggled to treat. Even if carried off the battlefield alive, survival was unlikely. The bladed mace was a reminder that armor was not enough. For every improvement in defense, the weapon evolved to counter it. The scorpion bolt launcher. Smaller than a Roman ballista, but no less terrifying, the scorpion bolt launcher was used in medieval fortresses. It fired long bolts with remarkable precision, rotating in flight and hitting with enough force to impale a man through a shield. Defenders could pin enemies to wooden towers or knock mounted knights off their horses. Some bolts were barbed, making removal nearly impossible. Soldiers often left the barbed head in the wound rather than attempting extraction. Accuracy, power, and psychological terror made this a fearsome medieval siege weapon. The garrote. Finally, the garrote. A simple execution tool that became a feared weapon in medieval Spain. A wooden handle with a cord or wire looped around the neck. The executioner twisted slowly, the cord biting into flesh, cracking bones, and suffocating the victim. It was official, state-sanctioned, and horrifying. The garrote represents the darkest aspect of weaponized control, killing by slow, deliberate method. It reminds us that cruelty was sometimes embedded in law itself. These weapons were not born from madness or malice alone. They were solutions to real battlefield problems. Armor became stronger, so weapons became crueler. Warfare evolved, and so did brutality. But looking back, we see that medieval weapons were more than tools of war. They were instruments of fear, public reminders that pain itself was a weapon. They shaped strategy, defined combat, and left an enduring mark on history. Every flail, morning star, warhammer, crossbow, poleaxe, man-catcher, boar spear, bladed mace, scorpion bolt launcher, and garrote was designed with a single purpose: dominance. They remind us that in medieval Europe, survival was never guaranteed, and fear was always at arm's reach.